Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Hack, and Update 35 is fast approaching the Elder Scrolls Online with tons of major updates and changes. Things have definitely been crazy with lots of back and forth adjustments between weapon skills, class skills, even light and heavy attacks. But this week I had the chance to test one of my favorite playstyles in the game, and that is the Werewolf. And after testing, I found that there are actually a few changes in Update 35 that makes Werewolf builds one of the strongest and easiest playstyles in this entire patch, and I don't want you to miss this. So let's go over all of the major changes and show you exactly why I am excited to play Werewolf again in Update 35. Alright, so as I said, there are many changes to builds happening in Update 35, so I've been investigating a lot on the test server. Like I said in this video, we're going to dive into everything specifically for the Werewolf, but it's not just Werewolf abilities that I'm going to point out to you, but also some other major changes that have direct effects on how you play as a Werewolf. Things like your choice of class, gear sets, and buffs that you can have access to. So lots of good changes here. Now, I do want to start off with something a little bit more controversial just to explain it and make sure you get a heads up on that. And that is going to be changes specifically to damage over time effects. Now, in the case of the Werewolf, this is going to obviously affect Claws of Life or Claws of Anguish, whichever morph you decide to use. So previously, this was about a 10-second damage over time effect, which has now been increased to 20 seconds. Now, this can be good or bad, I think, depending on how you look at it. If you're a fan of, longer, easier rotations, then this is going to be pretty good for you. You can wait twice as long, basically, before you need to recast. Now, the problem I see, though, here is more focused on solo players, and that is the damage and the healing is going to be noticeably reduced. Now, first, the damage was nerfed, as were most of those, sticky target-based dots. That basically includes everything from, weapon dots, class dots. So that's to be expected pretty much in Update 35. Less damage, longer durations. And the problem for Werewolf specifically, though, is that this damage when using Claws of Life, especially for a solo build, that's converted into healing. So not only are you doing less damage per second with your Claw skill, you're also going to get less healing overall, especially in the moment. And I believe they did nerf the tooltip or the healing value as well. This used to heal you for 100% of the damage done. Now it's only healing you for about 70%. Now, the justification for this nerf that they talked about in the patch notes is you can damage multiple targets with Claws of Life, and you can get multiple heals back at the same time, which I think is a fair note to make. But just keep in mind that when you're facing off solo against a single target, a boss, maybe something like that, the lack of healing that you're going to get from the skill is going to be noticeable. So you will need to make this up in other ways. But, as far as like nerfs or downgrades, that's pretty much it for the Werewolf playstyle that I have seen. Now, let's talk about some other more positive changes that are going to give you more options. Number one, you can see here, I am actually playing on a Stamina Templar. Let me jump up to my class skills. So something that is sort of new for Werewolves is the viability of other classes. I think, it used to be pretty much meta on a Werewolf build to play Sorcerer. That's because you get things like increased physical damage, you get cost reduction of ultimates, so it's easier to get back into Werewolf form. I don't think that's changed a whole lot. Sorcerer is still going to be a really good choice of class if you want to play, a Werewolf build. But the Templar class has actually jumped up a little bit in terms of, classes I would recommend. I would definitely recommend Templar now. The main reason for that is if we look at some of our passives here in Adric's Spear, specifically Burning Light. Burning Light did see a pretty big change in the Update 35 PTS as well. It used to be restricted where you could only get this extra damage if you're using Adric's Spear abilities, usually Biting Jabs, Puncturing Sweep, your Spear, things like that. But now, when you deal damage, any type of damage, you can generate those stacks of Burning Light. So this can proc off of other abilities, weapon skills, and even world skills like, your Werewolf damaging abilities and your light and heavy attacks. So Werewolves will see a bit of a boost if you want to build it on the Templar class in terms of your damage, anywhere from, 5 to 10%, because you're going to get that extra damage from Burning Light. So that is nice. I don't think they, made this change specifically with Werewolves in mind, but it does definitely make Templar more of a viable choice. Templars have really good passives, to be honest. I mean, not just Burning Light. Balanced Warrior is really good. You get weapon and spell damage, extra, resistances. They do get cost reduction as well. Passives like Restoring Spirit reduce the cost of your abilities and your ultimate. So I haven't had time to test it, head-to-head versus a sorcerer, but I just wanted to put that out there. Templar definitely a nice option if you have one that you want to turn into a werewolf. So keep that in mind. Now, the other change that I want to point out to you guys is the Oaken Soul Ring. And this has gone through several changes on the PTS. So here's where we ended up with at the end of the patch. And I think it's actually pretty good for werewolf builds specifically. So what has changed? Well, Major Berserk is now gone, but you get Minor Berserk instead. Now, this is actually kind of a net positive for werewolf builds, specifically because if you look at your skills and Hircine's Rage, if you use this while at full health, you have on-demand access to Major Berserk anyway. So in some cases, for group content, if you have a tank who is able to hold aggro for you, you can actually get both buffs now on an Oaken Soul werewolf build. You can have Minor Berserk and Major Berserk at the same time. So that's pretty decent. Now, will you be able to have that all the time? No, not necessarily. So it does depend on the situation. Major Courage is now Minor Courage, which I think is fine. I mean, in top-end groups, you can get that buff fairly easily as well. Major Force is now Minor Force. You will feel that difference a little bit in terms of damage, but it's really not too bad because Minor Force is not a buff that you have access on werewolves anyway. So you can get Minor Force for free, and then you can use maybe a set if you want. One of the new dungeon sets actually gives you Major Force. So again, potentially depending on which sets you run, you can actually have access to both Minor Force and Major Force. Now, the other new additions here are at the bottom of the tooltip. Minor Slayer and Minor Aegis were added. So Minor Slayer increases your damage by an extra 5% against dungeon and trial monsters. And then Minor Aegis, that increases your damage reduction by 5%. So this is going to be really good for bringing your werewolf into dungeons, into trials. You'll get that extra damage and protection, which is nice. And again, you don't have to run trial sets to maintain those buffs anymore. So you can potentially have access to them earlier. And then, like we said, you can use other sets, something like the new Major Force set from the new DLC dungeons. You'll have more opportunities to mix things up. And then lastly, I want to talk about Empower because this is a game changer for werewolf builds, depending upon how you make use of it. So what does Empower do? I can show you right here. It's in one of the Mage Guild passives now as well. So when you get Empower, this increases the damage of your heavy attacks against monsters by 80%. So the Oaken Soul Ring has this buff now just on at all times by default. 80% bonus to your heavy attacks in PvE content. This is a massive, massive change, you guys, for any type of build that wants to make use of heavy attacks. Not just like a Lightning Staff heavy attack build, not a 2H heavy attack DK, but actually werewolf heavy attack builds can benefit from this a lot as well. Some different skills that you want to be aware of that sort of combine together with an Empower focused build on the werewolf. Number one, your choice of ultimate, Werewolf Berserker. Your heavy attacks deal 50% splash damage. If you want to focus on an Empower build, definitely using this morph versus the other one, so you have some additional splash damage potential. Recommend that as your choice. And then this specific morph here of Roar, Ferocious Roar, this has the fear, right? So it's really good for solo and even group content. Has the off balance, but also your heavy attacks are 33% faster for 10 seconds after casting. So I don't know if many people are aware of this morph. Most people tend to use the other morph since it has, the armor debuff. But if you can get penetration in other ways, Lover Mundus through your sets, Sharpen trait, and you take this morph instead, you can have the best, one of the best heavy attack spamming builds in the game. You can incorporate heavy attack sets, things like Sergeant's Mail. You've got your Oaken Soul Ring, so you have a lot of major and minor buffs with that. You've got the Constant Empower, which is another 80% bonus. And then off balance, you have on-demand off balance. If you're playing solo or in a group, off balance is an additional bonus to your heavy attack damage. So just to show you what that would look like, you can see my buffs here from Oaken Soul. I do have Empower on the bottom right. I can get my Major Berserk. I can get my heavy attack speed buff. And then I can just go to town with about 5-6 seconds worth of off balance empowered heavy attacks, which is really, really easy, and it's really strong as well. Now, obviously, that's going to be best when the target is off balance, but when it's not off balance, that's when you can do like your Howl of Agony, just basic single target DPS skill, and just kind of alternate. So when the target is off balance, that's when you do your heavy attacks, and when not, just use your basic DPS skills. I mean, this playstyle is very easy, and it's really effective, to be honest. Just self-buffed, for example, against a world boss, your heavy attacks can hit for 65, 70k damage each, if those happen to crit. And then with more group buffs, on the trial dummy, for example, easy 120k plus heavy attacks. Then my build is not even, optimized for crit damage at this point. So just something you may want to check out if you happen to play a werewolf. The whole change to Empower is definitely going to be a nice bonus for players that enjoy a heavy attack playstyle. But werewolves can actually really take advantage of it more than probably any other class, thanks to that morph that lets them do heavy attacks 33% faster. And I am in the process of updating all the werewolf builds over on my website, hacktheminotaur.com. Feel free to check that out. And our Elite Squad channel members just got access to a really nice updated version of the Unkillable solo werewolf build. That's also been updated for group content and DPS. This thing hits hard, has a ton of self-healing and survivability. It's going to be great for all content. If you are a Tier 2 channel member, make sure to check out our community page so you can view that right now. Or if you are not yet a channel member, click on that join button down below for more information. We have tons of great perks, like I said, including our members-only build library, early access to videos, and a whole lot more. But that's all I have for you guys in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments of werewolves moving forward into Update 35. Are you excited to try this out? And what do you think about these changes? And as always, thank you for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.